Retirement was supposed to be the reward. 31 years of punching a clock, managing ungrateful coworkers, surviving office politics sharp enough to draw blood. And at the end of it all, I got my prize. A lake house in Pinecrest. 3 bedrooms, a wraparound deck, and more silence than I'd heard in 3 decades. Amanda and I had saved for it longer than some of our neighbors had been alive. We drove up on a Saturday morning in October, stood on that deck together, and watched the fog lift off the water. She squeezed my hand. I didn't say anything. There was nothing that needed saying. For 8 months, it was perfect. I didn't know it yet, but that peace was about to be weaponized against me. Welcome back to Dad's Sweet Revenge. Grab your snacks, get comfortable, and remember, every villain in these stories thought they were the smartest person in the room. They were not. Subscribe so you never miss a story. Our daughter Isabella had married Stuart 2 years prior. I'll be honest, I'd had reservations. Not the kind I aired at the wedding because I'm not a man who lights fires in his own house. But Stuart had a particular talent I'd clocked early. He said things in a tone that made them sound like facts when they were actually requests. Like there was no version of reality where you'd say no. Amanda called it confidence. I called it something that starts with a different letter. They lived 40 minutes from us, in a suburb that looked like every other suburb. Tan houses, tan fences, tan people with beige dreams. Stuart worked in commercial real estate. Isabella taught 2nd grade. They had 1 kid, our grandson Logan, who was 4 years old and the only genuinely perfect thing in this story. On the last Friday of June, they came for dinner. I grilled. Amanda had made her potato salad, the good one with the whole grain mustard, not the sad mayonnaise version she makes when she's tired. We ate on the deck. Logan chased fireflies. It was nice. It was the kind of nice that makes you let your guard down. That's when Stuart set down his beer and said, "So, Dad, we wanted to talk to you about something." I have never once in my life liked a sentence that started that way. "Sure," I said. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, like he was about to present a business proposal, which I would later understand he absolutely was. "My parents," he said. "Reed and Nicole. You know they've been having a rough time." I did know. Reed had retired early due to a bad back, and Nicole, I'll be diplomatic here, Nicole had a personality that made every room feel smaller. They'd been living in an apartment outside the city since selling their house 2 years ago. Stuart had mentioned, in passing, that they weren't happy there. I'd filed it away under "not my problem." "What kind of rough time?" Amanda asked. "Financial, mostly. And my dad's back has gotten worse. They need somewhere quieter, somewhere with space." He paused. Let it sit there, then, "We were thinking, just temporarily, they could stay here, in the lake house." The deck got very quiet. A loon called out across the water. I remember thinking, "Yeah, me too, buddy." "Temporarily," I said. 3 months. Maybe 4. Just until we figure something out. I looked at Amanda. Amanda looked at me. Isabella was staring at the table like the wood grain was suddenly the most interesting thing on earth. "Stuart," I said carefully, "this is our home." I know, and we wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. They're family. They're your family, I thought. But I didn't say it. Not yet. Amanda put her hand on my arm. "Let us think about it," she said. Stuart smiled. And I noticed, I filed it away immediately, that he smiled before Amanda had finished the sentence. Like the answer was already decided. Like "let us think about it" was just the formality before the inevitable yes. I didn't say anything that night, but I started thinking. The following week was what I privately call the campaign. Stuart texted. Isabella called. Nicole, who had never once called me in 2 years of being family, left a voicemail that was 8 minutes long and included the phrase, "We just need someone to believe in us right now," no fewer than 3 times. Reed sent a handwritten note, which impressed me until I realized Nicole had almost certainly dictated it. Amanda softened. I watched it happen in real time. She's a good woman, my wife. Too good sometimes. She started saying things like, "It's only temporary, and they're struggling, and Logan would love having his grandparents nearby." I listened. I nodded. I did not commit. Then Stuart came by one afternoon, alone, no Isabella, and sat across from me at the kitchen table with that same boardroom posture. "I think there's some hesitation on your end," he said. "Sharp instincts," I said. He didn't miss a beat. "I get it. It's your space. But honestly, Andrew, what are you using the 3rd bedroom for? Storage?" I looked at him for a long moment. "Stuart," I said, The third bedroom is a guest room. For guests we invite. Right. And my parents are not guests I've invited. He shifted. I guess I thought family didn't need a formal invitation. Family, I said, is a word people use when they want something without asking properly. He stared at me. I stared back. It was the first time I'd spoken plainly to him, and I could see he didn't quite know what to do with it. Then he said, and I want you to understand that this is a direct quote. Look, I wasn't going to say this, but Isabella is really stressed about this. And when Isabella is stressed, it affects our marriage. And when our marriage is affected, it affects Logan. I heard that. I heard every layer of it. He had just held my daughter's marriage and my grandson's stability over my head like a conductor's baton. I smiled. Let me talk to Amanda, I said. He left satisfied. I stood at the window and watched his car disappear around the bend. And I made a decision I have not regretted for a single second since. I said yes. But not before I made a phone call. My friend Ashley, who I'd worked with for 12 years and who was before she retired the sharpest operator I'd ever known, had gone into home security consulting after leaving our company. I called her the evening after Stuart's visit. I need cameras, I said. Good ones, the kind that catch everything. Inside or out, both. And I need them installed before the guests arrive. Discreetly. There was a pause. Then Ashley said, Andrew, what are you planning? I'm not planning anything, I said. I'm documenting. She laughed. It wasn't a short laugh. Ashley came out 3 days later with her colleague. They installed 6 cameras total, 1 at the front door, 1 in the main living area, 1 in the kitchen, 1 covering the back deck, 1 at the foot of the stairs, and 1 covering the driveway, all connected to an app on my phone and a cloud server, all motion activated, all with audio, legal in our state. I'd checked. I set up alerts. Then Amanda and I moved our important documents, personal items, and anything irreplaceable into a locked room off the master bedroom, the one we'd always used as a home office. You're being dramatic, Amanda said, watching me pack a box. Probably, I said. I didn't tell her about the cameras. Not yet. Not because I was hiding anything from her, I never do, but because I knew if she was aware, she'd act differently, and I needed everyone to act naturally. I didn't know it then, but those cameras were going to save us. Reed and Nicole arrived on a Thursday. Nicole walked in and immediately said, "Oh, this is charming." The way she said charming made it sound like a polite synonym for something smaller than she expected. She touched things as she walked through. The curtains, the countertops, the frames on the wall. Like she was appraising. Reed was quieter. His back was genuinely bad. He moved carefully, and I felt a small grudging sympathy for that. He thanked me for having them. His handshake was firm. I could work with Reed. Nicole was the problem. Within 48 hours, she had rearranged the furniture in the living room. I came downstairs Saturday morning, and the couch was against a different wall. And the armchair I'd had since 2019, the good reading chair, the one that took 6 months to break in, was pushed into the corner at a 90-degree angle that made it face a wall. "Nicole," I said, with exceptional patience, "did you move the furniture?" "I did," she said brightly. "The flow was all wrong. This is so much better. It's my house." "Oh, I know. I just thought it's the least I could do, to help." Reed, from behind his newspaper, Nicole. She ignored him and started talking about throw pillows. I put the chair back. She moved it again the next day when I was at the hardware store. I moved it back again. We did this 3 times before I decided I was better served saving my energy. The cameras, meanwhile, were catching everything. Week 2 was when the first real alarm went off. I was sitting on the deck with my coffee, 6:15 in the morning, my sacred hour, when my phone buzzed. Motion alert. Kitchen camera. I opened the app. Nicole was on the phone, standing at my kitchen counter, speaking in that particular low-register voice people use when they think no one can hear. I turned up the volume. "I'm telling you, there's so much space here. The third bedroom is just sitting empty now that we're in it. But Andrew's got this whole locked room off the master that I'm sure has." I listened. Reed's talking about his back, but honestly, this is the best he's felt in years. If we play it right, Stu, I think we could make this work long term. He's retired. He and Amanda travel. Half the time the house would basically be. I put the phone down. I sat very still. A heron landed at the edge of the dock. It stood there absolutely motionless, staring at the water with the patience of something that had decided to wait. Long term. Play it right. I went back inside and made a second cup of coffee. I didn't say a word to Nicole. I smiled when she said good morning. I asked if Reed needed anything for his back. I was so pleasant it probably should have terrified her. I texted Ashley, "You're going to want to hear what I'm collecting." She responded, "Save everything." By week 3, the pattern was clear. Stuart visited often, more often than felt casual. He and Nicole had long conversations on the back deck that they clearly believed were private. They were not. Audio was excellent out there. There was a reason I'd placed the camera at the upper corner of the eave. What I heard cumulatively, over the course of those sessions, Nicole believed Amanda and I would come around to a permanent arrangement. Stuart had apparently told her that they just need time. Isabella, for her part, was not mentioned as being involved in this plan, which told me she probably wasn't, and that her stress and her marriage had been a lever Stuart had pulled without her knowledge. Reed had been promised, by Stuart, that this was a temporary situation. Reed thought 3 months. He said so to Nicole in a conversation she clearly thought was private. Nicole told him to stop being so rigid. Reed said something I won't repeat here, but it rhymed with "forget this," and walked back inside. I was starting to genuinely feel for Reed. One evening, I was on the dock alone. Reed came down and sat in the other Adirondack chair, slowly, carefully, because of his back. We sat in silence for a while. Then he said, "I want you to know I didn't ask for this." "I know," I said. "Nicole has ideas," he said, which was, I suspected, the most diplomatic thing Reed had ever said in his life. "Stuart has ideas too," I said. Reed looked at the water. "He gets that from her side." We sat there a little longer. Then I said, "Reed, I want to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. All right? Did Stuart tell you that Amanda and I had agreed to this long term?" A long pause. "He said you were open to it." There it was. "We weren't," I said. "We aren't." Reed looked at me. Something passed over his face. Not quite shame, but the expression of a man who has suspected something for a while and just had it confirmed. "I see," he said. "We didn't talk about it more that night. We didn't need to." The moment everything broke open came in week 5. I was at the grocery store with Amanda when my phone lit up. Living room camera. Motion. I opened the app. Stuart was in my house. He hadn't called. He hadn't texted. He just let himself in. Apparently, Nicole had given him a key to our house, a key she'd found on the hook by the door, a key I hadn't yet thought to reclaim. And he was walking through the living room with a measuring tape. A measuring tape. Nicole was talking while he measured. "The wall here comes down. This room easily becomes 2 spaces. If you open the kitchen..." "Stuart." That was Isabella's voice. I felt a cold flood of relief followed immediately by the sick realization that my daughter was there, in my house, uninvited, while they were planning a renovation. "I don't think..." "It's fine. They're not home. That doesn't make it fine. Isabella, this is about family." I watched my son-in-law measure my living room wall with a tape measure, while his mother talked about which walls weren't load-bearing. Amanda was standing next to me in the produce aisle. She didn't know I was watching anything. She was holding a bag of apples. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Not even a little," I said. "We need to go home. I want to tell you that I went home and lost my temper." That would be the satisfying version. The righteous explosion. The moment where Andrew Peterson plants his feet and roars. That's not what happened. What happened was I pulled into the driveway, saw Stuart's car, and felt something settle in my chest. Not rage, something quieter and far more dangerous. Something that had been building for 5 weeks and had just finished constructing itself. I went inside. Isabella saw my face and went pale. "Dad, hey Stuart," I said pleasantly. He spun around, tape measure still in his hand. For a half-second he looked like a man who'd been caught, and then the professional smoothness came back, like a lid dropping over something. "Andrew, we were just measuring a beat, just getting some ideas together. For my house," I said. Well, yes. We thought down the road. "Stuart," I smiled. "How about we sit down?" We sat. Amanda was reading the room. She was watching me the way she watches me when she knows something is happening and she's deciding whether to intervene. I gave her a small look. She stayed quiet. "I have something to show all of you," I said. I pulled out my phone. I pulled up the app, and I played them the recording of Nicole's phone call from week 2. The kitchen went silent. Nicole's face did something complicated and athletic. "That's..." Stuart started. "Legal," I said. "In this state, yes. Single-party consent. And since it's my house, with cameras I installed and disclosed in my property rights documentation..." I paused. "Well, Documented is the word I'd use. You've been recording us? Nicole said. I've been documenting my own home, which is something I started doing, I said, after I was told my own family needed 3 or 4 months, and then caught you telling your son the plan was long-term. Isabella looked at Stuart. The look on her face was not a look I'd seen before. It was the look of someone doing arithmetic, fast, and not liking the answer. Stu, she said quietly. Isabella, did you tell them it was temporary? Look, the plan evolved. Did you tell me it was stressful for me because of my marriage? Stuart's jaw tightened. You used me, Isabella said. Not loud. Worse than loud. Then I told them the rest. I told them about the measuring tape conversation. I played that recording too. I told them about the key Nicole had taken from my own hook without permission and distributed to her son. I told them what Reed had told me on the dock, that Stuart had said we were open to it long-term before we'd agreed to any such thing. I did not raise my voice once. I watched Stuart try to manage the room, watched him redirect, pivot, soften. He was good. I'll give him that, but there's no pivot that works when the other person has audio. At some point, Nicole said, I think you're being very cold, Andrew. I think, I said, that you sat in my kitchen and called my house real estate on a phone call you thought was private. So I want to be careful with the word cold. Reed had come in at some point and was standing in the doorway. He looked at me and gave the smallest nod. It wasn't agreement, exactly. It was acknowledgement. Then I said the thing I'd been building to for 5 weeks. You have 2 weeks to find other arrangements. Stuart said, You can't be serious. I have never been more serious about anything that didn't involve a mortgage. Isabella? Don't, Isabella said. This is family, Nicole said. Yes, I agreed. And family doesn't move into a person's home uninvited, plan unauthorized renovations, and lie about the terms of an arrangement. That's not family, Nicole. That's a takeover. The next 2 weeks were not quiet. Stuart tried 3 separate approaches. Appeal to Isabella, appeal to Amanda, and what I can only describe as an attempted guilt construction. A carefully assembled argument that my refusal to house his parents permanently was a rejection of their family unit, their marriage, their child, and possibly Western civilization. Amanda by this point had watched the recordings herself. All of them. Including the deck conversations. Including Nicole explaining to Stuart that Amanda was the softer one and that if you work on her, it'll come around. Amanda is many things. Soft is not one of them. Get out of my kitchen, she told Nicole on day 10, in a tone I had never heard from her in 34 years of marriage, and hope I never hear directed at me. Nicole got out of the kitchen. Isabella came to see me alone on day 12. We sat on the dock. I didn't know, she said, about the long-term thing, about what he told me. I want you to know that. I know, I said. I'm angry at him. That's between you and Stuart. Are you angry at me? I looked at my daughter. I thought about her at 4 years old, chasing fireflies. I thought about her at 17, asking me to teach her to drive. I thought about the look on her face when she'd said, Did you use me, to her husband. No, I said. Not at you. She put her head on my shoulder. We sat there for a while. Dad, she said quietly, I think I need to have some conversations. I think that's a good idea, I said. Moving day came on a Tuesday. I was on the deck with my coffee, 6:15 my hour, when Reed came and found me. He had a bag in his hand. He set it down and held out his hand. I owe you an apology, he said. You don't. I do. I should have pushed back harder on the timeline. I suspected things were off, and I let Nicole manage it because it's easier than arguing. He paused. That was cowardly. You've got a bad back, I said. Pick your battles. Something like a smile crossed his face. You're decent, Peterson. Don't tell anyone. He left. Nicole walked past me to the car without speaking. She had the expression of a woman storing a grievance for future use. I stored one right back. Stuart came last. He stood at the door to the deck, keys in his hand. I hope, he said, that this doesn't have to define us. I looked at him over my coffee cup. Stuart, I said, you used your wife's emotions as leverage to move your parents into my home without genuine consent. Lied about the permanence of the arrangement. Had your mother take a key to my house without permission, and stood in my living room with a measuring tape planning which of my walls to remove. And then you tried to make me feel like I was the problem. He didn't say anything. So here's what defines us, I said. What you did is documented. Permanently. And if there is ever, Ever another attempt to manage, manipulate, or maneuver this family for your benefit. Those recordings go to Isabella. All of them. Every word. His face had done something I hadn't seen before. It wasn't anger. It was the expression of a man who has realized too late that he had fundamentally misread the person across from him. That the quiet, retired guy with the lake house wasn't slow or soft or easy. He'd just been patient. "We clear?" I said. He nodded. "Once." "Good," I said. "Drive safe." They were gone by noon. Amanda came and sat next to me on the deck. She brought the good coffee, the Ethiopian beans she saves for good days. She poured 2 cups. We sat and watched the water. The fog had lifted. The heron was back on the dock, motionless, waiting. "You know," Amanda said, "when you said you needed cameras, I thought you were being paranoid." "I know. I was wrong. You were optimistic," I said. "There's a difference." She leaned back in her chair. "So what now? Now we have our house back. And Isabella?" "Isabella," I said, "is having conversations. She'll be okay." Amanda nodded. She looked at the water. "He really did." She laughed. Not the polite laugh she uses in company. The real one. The deep, involuntary one that's been my favorite sound for 34 years. We sat there in the quiet until the sun was fully up. 6 weeks later, Isabella filed for a separation. I didn't celebrate that. I want to be clear. A marriage ending, even one that needed to end, is not a victory lap moment. My daughter was in pain. That mattered more than being right. But when she came up to the lake house that first weekend, alone, and sat on the deck and let the quiet work on her for a while, and then looked over at me and said, "Dad, how did you know?" I thought about the chair he'd moved, the tone of the first sentence, the smile before Amanda finished speaking, the measuring tape, experience, I said, and a decent camera system. She shook her head. "You were ready the whole time." "No," I said honestly. "I just paid attention." Logan came running down the dock toward us, arms out, absolutely certain I would catch him. I did. The heron lifted off the water, caught the light, and was gone. Stuart, as of the last I heard, had taken a job in another city. Nicole and Reed were renting an apartment smaller than they wanted, I'm sure. Nobody called to tell me this. I found out through Isabella, who found out from Reed, who apparently calls her sometimes to check in. I don't know what that means. I don't spend a lot of time thinking about it. What I do think about, sometimes, is this. Some people look at a quiet man who's worked hard, built something and stepped back to enjoy it, and they see a soft target. They see someone who won't push back, someone who'll absorb, adjust, accommodate, someone who'll let the furniture get rearranged because it's easier than an argument. What they don't see, what they can't see, because quiet people don't advertise it, is that the patience isn't weakness. It's preparation. It's documentation. It's 6 cameras and a cloud server and an audio file with your name all over it. It's knowing that the longer you wait, the more rope they use. Retirement, it turns out, is still a reward. You just have to protect it. The lake house is quiet again. The chair is back where I like it. Amanda made her good potato salad last Saturday, and we ate it on the deck while Logan chased fireflies, and the water reflected the last of the evening light, and nobody measured any walls. It was, in every way that matters, perfect. If you like this story, join our community by hitting that like button and subscribing for more real, raw, and family-centered stories.